Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to Bookaccino Live. It's Wednesday, September 11th. I just want to take a second to say, really, this is a really big day that we always want to remember. We were in New York, or I was on the way into New York. Our staff was in the office on 9/11, 2001. And I think it's one of those things that I want to make sure that nobody forgets. I think that they're starting to teach it in schools and things like that, but I didn't want to forego saying that it's September 11th without having a moment to just sit there and say, let's pause and just think about the meaning of this day. Okay, these were your top picks from August. Jodi Picoult's By Any Other Name, which was a New York Times #1 bestseller the week it came out. The Wedding People by Alan Esbash. I read this over the break. I have to say, it's a crazy, crazy, crazy book. She's also going to be at the Morristown Festival of Books. I'm going to bring up some authors that are going to be there simply because I'm going to be there moderating some panels as well. William Kent Kruger's Spirit Crossing, which is one of my latest bets on selections, hit the New York Times list at #3, which I think is his best ever. Worst Case Scenario by TJ Newman. Don't read it on an airplane, but it's really terrific. TJ really outdid herself, also hit the list. I believe it was at #9. Could be wrong. Matt Haig is just out with The Life Impossible. Paul Hawkins' The Blue Hour, I read over the break. Really interesting book. One of those locked room kind of mysteries out on an island. Really enjoyed it. It'll be a bet on, and I'm going to be talking to Paula. And The Book Swap by Tessa Vickers. Let's start with some fiction. Okay, Fathers and Fugitives by S.J. Naughty, which is out this week. That's from Europa Editions, which is one of the smaller publishers. We saw a great presentation from them, and Tom and I wanted to make sure that we wove in some books from them into our presentations over the next couple of months. So here's what we've got. A worldly and urbane journalist living in London, Daniel is a young gay man with no relationships outside sexual ones. He's emotionally distant from his elderly, senile father, but he nonetheless returns to South Africa to care for him during his final months. Following his father's death, Daniel learns of an unusual clause in the old man's will. He will only inherit half of his father's considerable estate once he has spent time with Theon, a cousin whom he hasn't seen since they were boys, who lives on the old family farm in Free State. Once there, Daniel discovers the young son of the woman Theon lives with is seriously ill. With conditions bearing on Daniel's inheritance shifting in real time, Theon and Daniel travel with the boy to Japan for an experimental cure and a voyage that will change their lives forever. They're describing this book. It just sounded really interesting, so we want to make sure to share with you as well. Next, we've got a very anticipated book, Here One Moment by Leanne Moriarty. It's out this week. It's a book reporter bets on, and right now, this is one of the books you can win in our word of mouth contest, where if you go out on Book Reporter and talk about a book that you've read, it's word of mouth kind of a thing to pass along to everybody else, and you rate the book, tell us what you think about it, you could be eligible to win a copy of this book. We're going to be giving away 3. So I really love this. It's a 500-page book, and the week we were off, I literally read it in a day, like an afternoon through the next afternoon. So good. So aside from the delay, there's not going to be any problems. The flight's going to be smooth. It will land safely. Everyone who gets on the plane will get off, but almost all of them will be forever changed. Because on this ordinary, short domestic flight, something extraordinary happens. People learn how and when they're going to die. For some, their death is far in the future, age 103, and they laugh. But for 6 passengers, their predicted deaths are not far away at all. If you were told you only had a certain amount of time left to live, would you do things differently? Would you dodge your destiny? What's really interesting is I'm going to share in the newsletter on Friday a piece in the New York Times where Leanne is interviewed because she really doesn't like talking about her books. She doesn't like talking about her work, going on the road, etc. I'm actually going to see her a week from Saturday in South Jersey. But it's a kind of thing where she's sold, I think it's 20 million books, but she doesn't like talking about them. She feels like she's talking about herself. But the idea for this book came when she was sitting in an airport and she was waiting for a flight. And she said, everybody on this flight is going to die at some point. Wonder what's going to happen. And that's where her wheels started turning to write the story. So really interesting. And what happens, and I'm not going to give something away because it's going to be happens really early in the book. one of the things does come true, and it gets everybody start to worry about what this woman was saying when she was on the airplane. Really interesting. It's a long book, but I really enjoyed reading it. Next, we've got Sky Full of Elephants by Sibo Campbell, which is also on sale this week. One day, all of the white people in America walk into the nearest body of water. A year later, Charlie Brunton, a black man living in an entirely new world. Having served time in prison for a wrongful conviction, is now a professor of electric and solar power systems at Howard University when he receives a call from his 19-year-old daughter, Sydney, who was left behind by her white mother and her stepfamily. Traumatized by the event and terrified of the outside world, Sydney has spent a year in isolation in Wisconsin. Desperate for help, she turns to the father she never met, a man she has always resented. Sydney and Charlie meet for the first time as they embark on a journey across truly post-racial America in search of answers. But neither of them are prepared for this new world and how they see themselves in it. So, Sky Full of Elephants. Next, we've got Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout. And if you didn't hear yet, this is Oprah's latest book club pick. It's on sale this week. It's autumn in Maine, and the town lawyer Bob Burgess has become enmeshed in an unfolding murder investigation, defending a lonely, isolated man accused of killing his mother. He also has fallen into a deep and abiding friendship with the acclaimed writer Lucy Barton. You people, anybody who's read Elizabeth Strout before knows Lucy Barton, who lives down the road in a house by the sea with her ex-husband, William. Together, Lucy and Bob go on walks and talk about their lives, their fears and regrets, and what might have been. Lucy, in the meantime, is finally introduced to the iconic Olive Kitteridge, now living in a retirement community on the edge of town. Spend afternoons together in Olive's apartment, telling each other stories about people they've known, unrecorded lives. Olive calls them animating them, and in the process, imbuing their lives with meaning. So there we've got Tell Me Everything. And what's really interesting is if you enjoy this book, well, there's a whole lot more that you can go out and read about Lucy Barton and Olive Kitteridge. This is not really a series, it's recurring characters. So you can have a great time with that. And Elizabeth Strout is the winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Next, we've got Entitlement by Rumaan Alam. Brooke wants. She isn't in need, but there are things she wants. A sense of purpose, for instance. She wants to make a difference in the world, to impress her mother along the way, spend time with friends, and secure her independence. Her job assisting an octogenarian billionaire in his quest to give away a vast fortune can help her achieve many of these goals. Maybe inspire new desires as well. Proximity to wealth turns out to be nothing less than transformative. What is money really but a kind of belief? So there you've got Entitlement out next week. Next, we've got The Most Famous Girl in the World. Did a contest for this over the last couple of days. It just ended at noon by Iman Hariri Kia. It's on sale next week. Rose Armani Isyami is in a mid-bikini wax when her phone lights up with a notification. Famed scam artist Poppy Hastings will be released from prison today. It's been 2 years since Rose, a first-generation Middle Eastern American, functional train wreck and reporter for the online journal The Shred, wrote the investigative article that has exposed Poppy as a socialite grifter. But the article and highly publicized trial that followed only turned Poppy into the internet's favorite celebrity. Poppy's star Rose as an influencer and pop culture icon, Rose became obsessed with exposing Poppy for the monster that she is, with the help of a devilishly handsome FBI agent gone rogue, no less. But it's not going to be easy talking down the first most famous girl in the world. So there you've got it. My gosh, what social media does these days. Next, from Nicholas Sparks, we've got Counting Miracles, which is coming on September 24th. Tanner Hughes was raised by his grandparents, following in his grandfather's military footsteps to become an Army Ranger. Before his grandmother passed away, she drops a bombshell with the name of the father he never knew and where to find him. So Tanner sets out for Asheboro, North Carolina, to ask around. He's been in town less than 24 hours when he meets Caitlin Cooper, a doctor and single mom. They both feel an immediate connection. Meanwhile, 83-year-old Jasper lives alone in a cabin, haunted by a tragic accident that took place decades before. Here's rumors that a white deer has been spotted in the forest, a creature of legend that inspired his father and grandfather, becomes obsessed with it. As these characters' fates orbit closer together, none of them is expecting a miracle, but that may be exactly what is about to alter their futures together. Now, it's funny because for Nicholas Sparks, we did one of the early interviews with him about the notebook shortly after we started the company. And at that time, it wasn't interviews where anyone was talking. The authors would actually call in and we would type for them, unless they could type fast enough themselves. So we would be doing the dialogue going back and forth. So someone from our office would be interviewing them on the phone and typing what they were saying at the same time. And at the same time, they would be on the phone giving their responses. And I remember Nicholas Sparks being on the phone and everybody just talking about the notebook and going back and forth. It was really, really funny. But at the same time, we're sitting there typing all of his responses that came in. So when I sit there and think about how far we've come, we have come far. Next, we've got Intermezzo from Sally Rooney on sale on September 24th. Aside from the fact that they're brothers, Peter and Ivan Quebec seem to have little in common. Peter is a lawyer in his 30s. In the wake of their father's death, he's medicating himself to sleep and struggling to manage his relationships with two very different women. He's enduring first love Sylvia and Naomi, a college student for whom life is one long joke. Ivan is a 22-year-old competitive chess player. In the early weeks of his bereavement, he meets Margaret, an older woman emerging from her own turbulent past, and their lives rapidly become and intensely intertwined. For two grieving brothers and the people they love, this new interlude, a period of desire, despair, and possibility, a chance to find out how much one life might hold inside itself without breaking. So we've got like chess pieces. Let's see who wins the game. Next, we've got Playground from Richard Powers. He's the winner of the Pulitzer Prize. He's the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Overstory. This was one of the books that was discussed during our book group speed dating event. So here we've got Evie Ballou sinks to the bottom of a swimming pool in Montreal, strapped to one of the world's first aqua lungs. Ina Ariata grows up on a naval base across the Pacific with art as her only home. Two polar opposites and an elite college, Chicago high school, bond over a 3,000-year-old board game. Rafi Young will get lost in literature, while Todd Keene's work will lead to a startling AI breakthrough. They meet on the history-scarred island of Manatea in the French Polynesia, whose deposits of phosphorus once helped to feed the world. Now, the tiny atoll has been chosen for humanity's next adventure, a plan to send floating autonomous cities out into the open sea. But first, the island's residents must vote to greenlight the project or turn the seasteaders away. Tom, I'm going to ask you to jump on. If you, I know you went to lunch with Richard Powers. Am I missing anything in the discussion of this book?
No, I think that's a pretty good summary of it. Yeah, I don't think there's really anything else.
And the media that was there, everybody was really excited about it, right?
Oh yeah, no, and he was great talking about it, and yeah, no, it's definitely a book to look forward to. He was great though talking about it, and it was one of the bigger crowds I will say for a media lunch like that. There were at least like 60, 70 people there.
Wow.
So yeah, I was very impressed with the turnout.
Wow. Wow. And it's interesting because it's also, if I remember correctly, long listed for the Booker Prize as well.
Yes, it was. Yeah. So it's we'll see if it is going to be on the short list, which I think is going to be announced next week. I think next Monday.
Okay, great. And we're starting to get the long list for the National Book Award. I think a lot of them will be in by the end of this week. We've already seen the young adult or the children's, yeah, children's young adult, and we've already seen translation. So that means the rest of them will be coming probably by the end of this week, beginning of next week.
Right.
So, okay, thanks, Tom. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Next, we've got A Reason to See You Again by Jamie Attenberg. When the women of the Cohen family are in crisis, triggered by the death of their patriarch, Rudy, the glue that has all held them all together, everyone's lives soon take a dramatic turn. Shelley, the younger of the two Coen sisters, runs off to the West Coast to immerse herself in an emerging and lucrative world of technology. Her sister gets married at the age of 21 to a traveling salesman with a shadowy lifestyle, while their mother, Frida, hurls herself into a boozy, troubled existence in Miami, trying to forget the past even as it haunts her. They each learn in different ways that running from the past can't save you, and they must make life-altering decisions about what they want their family to be and what they need to move forward. So here we've got Reason to See You Again. I really get a kick out of what the covers got on it. It's like, remember the telephone. Remember taking the telephone on the long cord in the other room so you could have privacy. Every time I think of what life was like and what life is like now, oh my gosh, to be a teenager now, totally different experience. And she's the author of The Middlesteins, in case anybody remembers that book. Okay, we've got The Mighty Red by Louise Erdrich, which is on sale on October 1st. In Argus, North Dakota, a collection of people revolve around a fraught wedding. Gary Geist, a terrified young man set to inherit two farms, is desperate to marry Kismet Poe, an impulsive lapsed goth who can't read her future but seems to resolve his. Hugo, a gentle, red-haired homeschool giant, is also in love with Kismet. He's determined to steal her and is eager to be a homewrecker. Kismet's mother, Crystal, holds sugar beets for Gary's family, and on her nightly runs, she tunes in the darkness of late-night radio. She sees visions of guardian angels and worries for the future, her daughters and her own. So there you've got The Mighty Red coming on October 1st. Next, we've got Shred Sisters, also coming on October 1st. Said that one person in a family is unstable, the whole family is destabilized. Meet the Shreds. Olivia is the sister in the spotlight until her stunning confidence becomes erratic and unpredictable, a hurricane, leaving people wrecked in her wake. Younger sister Amy, cautious and studious to the core, believes in facts, proof, and the empirical world. None of that explains what's happening to Ollie, whose physical beauty and charisma mask the mental illness that will shatter Amy's carefully constructed life. As Amy comes of age and seeks to find her place, first in academics, then New York publishing, and through a series of troubled relationships, every step brings collisions with Ollie, who slips in and out of the Shred family without warning. Yet, all that threatens their sibling bond, Amy and Ollie cannot escape or deny the inextricable sister knot that binds them together. So there we've got Shred Sisters from Betsy Werner. So let's do some historical fiction. Start up with a story of somebody I really never thought about, Catherine, the Wright sister. This is by Tracy Anderson Wood. Engineers across the world were puzzling over how to build flying machine, and Wilbur and Orville Wright wanted in on the chance. But their younger sister, Catherine, knew that they couldn't do it without her. Anybody know that? Three siblings made a pact. The three of them would solve the problem of human flight. So brothers obsessed over blueprints and risked life and limb testing new models. Catherine became the mastermind behind the scenes of their inventions. And in 1903, they made their first controlled, sustained flight of humankind. But at the height of their success, tragedy wrenched the Wright family apart and forced Catherine to make an impossible choice that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Okay, so did anybody know there was a Wright sister? I bet you didn't. I didn't either. And just think about what that could have been like back then. It was really cool. We were down in North Carolina on the Outer Banks at one point. We went where the Wright Museum was and to see how far they flew, which was not that far. But it was really interesting to see the early days of flying and what the brothers had done. So I don't know if there's a mention there of Catherine. I really should go back and check. Next, we've got A Place to Hide by Ronald Balson. Probably remember him as the author of Once We Were Brothers. This is out on September 17th. Theodore Teddy Hartigan is the scion of a wealthy Washington, D.C. family who placed him in a comfortable job at the State Department and a placid diplomat's career. In 1938, as Hitler's inexorable rise continues, Teddy is reassigned to the U.S. consulate in Amsterdam to replace fleeing staff. His job is to process visa applications, and by 1939, refugees from Nazi-conquered Poland, Austria, and other countries are desperate to secure safe passage to America. When Teddy and his girlfriend are introduced to an orphaned young girl named Katie, who has been abandoned on the grounds of a nursery school, they agree to adopt her. and Teddy makes the dangerous and selfless decision to join with underground groups and use his position at the consulate to rescue those with no other avenue of escape. It's really interesting to think back on that time of like people leaving. I'm not sure if I've shared this story before. My mother-in-law was born here, and her father was here and her mother was here. They had come over from Germany. And at one point, her father wasn't sure if he wanted to go back to Germany to live. So they moved back there for a while. And they actually came back in May of 1939. And when we were going through a number of her belongings that were left behind, we actually found the passport that she came back with that had her brother like as a +1 down on the bottom, and it had the swastika on it and stamps all over it. And it was very, very chilling to realize if they had not come back at that point, what might have happened, just being American and being in Germany, even if they weren't Jewish. So it was really interesting to just kind of have that personal experience and see what happened during that time. Next, we've got The Wilds by Louis Baynard. This is coming on September 17th, talking about people who will be appearing at the Morristown Festival of Books, and Louis is going to be there. It's on October 19th in Morristown, New Jersey. Here we've got on September 1892, Oscar Wilde and his family have retreated the idyllic Norfolk countryside for a holiday. His wife Constance has every reason to be happy. Two beautiful sons, her own work as an advocate for feminist causes, and a delightfully charming and affectionate husband and father to her children, who also happens to be the most sought after author in England. But the arrival of an unexpected house guest, the aristocratic young poet, Lord Alfred Douglas, constant gradually and then all at once, comes to see that her husband's heart is elsewhere, and that the growing intensity between the two men threatens the foundation of their lives. So there you've got The Wilds, and it's called a novel in 5 acts. Next, we've got The Fabled Earth, which is coming from Kimberly Brock on October 1st. She's the best-selling author of The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare, which was shortlisted for the prestigious Townsend Prize for Fiction, and The River Witch, which is the recipient of the Georgia Author of the Year award. Southern mythology and personal reckoning collide in the sweeping story inspired by the little-known history of Cumberland Island, when a once-in-a-century storm threatens the natural landscape. Faced with a changing world, two timelines, and the perspectives of three women that intersect, where folktale meets truth to reveal what Cumberland Island has hidden all along. And let's do some thrillers and mysteries. Starting out with The Examiner by Janice Hallett, out this week. University professor Jella Nathaniel must make her new master's program in multimedia art succeed. If it doesn't, the Royal Hastings University will cut her funding and she'll be out of the job she loves. 6 students in this inaugural course will be key to that success. But how well has she selected the team? The end of the academic year, when the examiner arrives to grade the student's final project, he finds himself asking what happened, because if someone in that course is in immoral danger, then they are all dead. But by who and why? He wants to lead us to read, oops, I'm sorry, that was bad. He wants to, wait a second, it's project. Okay, let's start. At the end of the academic year, no, he wants us to read, I'm sorry, guys, through the students' coursework, text, message boards, and final essays to see if we can find the answers. Only one thing is certain. Nothing about this course has been left to chance, and each of these students has their own very different agenda. So we've got 6 students, 1 murder. Can you solve the crime? It's called The Examiner by Janice Hallett, out this week. Next, we've got The Night We Lost Him by Laura Dave. It is on sale on September 17th. It is absolutely terrific. Everyone who enjoyed The Last Thing He Told Me will absolutely enjoy The Night We Lost Him. And if you can remember how to keep those 2 titles straight, you get an award. This book is a Bookreporter Bets On selection. I just did an interview with Laura yesterday. They're going to run it a couple of weeks. So much fun. She also is one of the word of mouth prizes this week. So if you go out to word of mouth and tell us what you're reading, you could win this. And it's one of the books that we're giving away. And also it's one of our fall reading contests. It's going to be a contest next Tuesday for those of you in the know. And it was also talked about during book group speed dating. So what's so exciting about this book? Liam Noon was many things to many people. To the public, he was an exacting, self-made hotel magnate fleeing his past. To his three ex-wives, he was a loving, albeit distant family man who kept his finances flush and his family carefully separated. To Nora, he was a father who often loved her from afar, notably a cliffside cottage perched on the California coast from which he fell to his death. The authorities rule the death as accidental, but Tenora and her estranged brother Sam have other ideas. Nora and Sam form an uneasy alliance to unravel the mystery. They start putting together the pieces of their father's past and uncover a family secret that really changes everything. So well done. It's one of those books that's just, you're just going into each page. And remember, Nora and her brother Sam, they're not friends, they don't get along. He asks her to work on this with her. She has no desire. Part is written in the first person, Nora's story, and we've got Sam. And if it reminds you a lot of the two characters that were in the last thing he told me, which really didn't want to be with each other either, you've got that tension that's happening between two people besides what's happening in the rest of the book. It's really well done. It's already been picked up by Netflix. Laura is going to be writing the screenplay. She actually gave them the notes for it, and they're actually working on that while she is simultaneously writing The Last Thing He Told Me, a sequel to that. And besides that being a sequel that is also being written for Apple TV at the same time. So she has a lot going on. She has a really interesting schedule. Every day she gets up at 5, she writes till 11. 11 to 3, she does whatever you have to do. At 3 o'clock, she picks up her son, and that becomes the rest of her day. And what she feels is that writing is the most important to her. If she gets up and she does that first, she can go on with her day because that is a thing that she doesn't want to sacrifice time for. And I think that any of us who are trying to do something, if you think about what time you want to take that's precious to you, whether it's for exercising, reading, cooking, crafting, whatever you want to do, it's really interesting to be that strict about what it does. And she said, and then after 11, she feels like she's done what she needs to do. She can move on with her day. Very interesting. Precipice by Robert Harris is out on September 17th. 1914 in London, 26-year-old Venetia Stanley, aristocrat, clever, bored, and reckless, is part of a fast group of upper crust bohemians and socialites known as the Coterie. She's also engaged in a clandestine love affair with the Prime Minister, H.A. Asquith, a man more than twice her age. He writes to her obsessively, sharing the most sensitive matters of state. He reluctantly leaves the country into war with Germany. A young intelligence officer with Scotland Yard is assigned to investigate a leak of top secret documents. Suddenly, what was sexual intrigue becomes a matter of national security that could topple the British government and will alter the course of political history. So there you've got Precipice, and is by Robert Harris. Next, from Richard Osman, we've got We Solve Murders, which is coming out on September 17th. Steele Wheeler is enjoying retired life. Still does the odd bit of investigation work, but he prefers his familiar routines. The pub quiz, his favorite bench, cat waiting for him at home. The days of adventure are over. Adrenaline is his daughter-in-law Amy's job now. Amy Wheeler thinks adrenaline is good for the soul. Working in private security every day is dangerous. She's currently on a remote island protecting mega best-selling author Rosie D'Antonio until a dead body and a bag of money means trouble in paradise. So she sends an SOS to the only person she trusts. So a thrilling race around the world begins. Can Amy and Steve outrun and outsmart a killer? And this is the #1 New York Times best-selling author of The Thursday Murder Club. Next, from Tammy Hogue, we've got Bad Liar. I'm reading this now. It's out on September 24th. It's been a while since Tammy's had a book out. She had some health issues, but she's definitely back. And I confess that I haven't read, this is part of a series. I have not read the other books, but I'm not having any trouble enjoying this story and being completely into it. As a murder victim is dumped at the dead end of a lonely country road, it's not the way Sheriff Detective Nick Forcade wanted to start his week. His only lead takes him to the family of a hometown hero suddenly gone missing. Mark Mercier left his home for a weekend hunting trip and hasn't been seen since. Meanwhile, Sheriff's Detective Annie Broussard begins her first day back on the job after suffering a brutal attack by taking on the case of Boulogne Fontenot, a mother desperate to find her grown son, recovering drug addict. Robbie has been missing for 8 days, but the local police have no interest in the case. Annie's going to search for Robbie, Nick's going to investigate Mark's disappearance. It quickly appears that becomes apparent that nothing is as it seemed in the lives of either man. And what's really interesting is there's everybody's going into the morgue looking at this body. Is this the person? Is this what's going on? So there's a real tension that's built up as the story's going on. A little bit more than halfway through, and I've really been enjoying it. The way she's building the story. Next, we've got The Forest of Lost Souls by Dean Koontz, which is out on September 24th. Raised in the wilderness by her late great uncle, Vida is a young woman with the almost preternatural affinity for nature, especially for the wolves that also call the forested mountains home. Formed by hard existence, by love and loss, and by the prophecies of a fortune teller, Vida just wants peace. If only nearby Kettleton County didn't cast such a dark shadow. Which was Jose, the love of Vida's life, a cherished local hero, died in a tragic accident. That's the official story, but Vida has reasons to doubt it. Truth can't be contained for long, nor can the hungry men of power in Kettleton who want something too, that Vida, like Jose, disappear forever. One by one, they come for her, prepared to do anything to see their plan through to the evil end. Vida is no less prepared for them. So there you've got The Forest of Lost Souls. Next, from Karen Marie Morning, we've got The House at Watch Hill, be out on October 1st. Zoe Gray is reeling from the sudden death of her mother when she receives a surprising call from an attorney in Divinity, Louisiana, with the news that she's been left an inheritance by a distant relative, the terms of which he will only discuss in person. Zoe heads to Divinity and discovers she's the sole beneficiary of a huge fortune and a monstrosity of a house that sits ominously at the peak of Watch Hill. But she must live in it alone for 3 years before the house or the money is hers. Met with this irresistible opportunity to finally build a future for herself, Zoe puts aside her misgivings about the foreboding Gothic mansion and the strange circumstances and moves in. Her new home is full of countless secrets and mystifying riddles. What Zoe doesn't know yet is that her own roots lie in this very house. In order to discover her true identity and awaken her dormant powers, she'll have to face off against sinister forces she can't quite comprehend or risk being consumed by them. Now, I tell you something, Tom, I think we're going to have to think about working on something like this. There's a will that has to be discussed. There's a fortune that's out there. I think one of these times we have to picture out what word we're going to see how many times, and people have to see how many times that word comes up. Because you see what I'm talking about. We're seeing the same kind of a story over and over again.
That's right. I know.
I think we've got to do this. I think we've got to come up with next time or the following time what the word is and go for it from there and see who can guess down in the chat. Next, we've got The Mistletoe Mystery by Anita Prose. Okay, we've got Molly Gray. She's always loved the holidays. Molly was a child. Her gran went to great lengths to make the season merry and bright, full of cherished traditions. The first few Christmases without gran were hard on Molly, but this year her beloved boyfriend and fellow festive spirit, Juan Manuel, is intent on making the season Molly's most joyful. But when Secret Santa gift exchange at the Regency Grand Hotel raises questions about who Molly can and cannot trust, she dives headfirst into solving her most consequential and personal mystery yet. She has bad feelings about things and she starts to wonder, has she yet again mistaken a frog for a prince? This is a novella. Nita's got a new full-length book coming out next April. Next, we've got No One Will Know by Rose Carlyle. It's coming out on October 1st. Julie and Christopher Highgate have the picture-perfect life, gobs of money thanks to their lucrative shipping enterprise, and an estate on a secluded island. They meet Eve Sylvester. They know she's the exact person they should hire to be their child's nanny. Eve doesn't have any living relatives. She's lost touch with her friends. Her partner's out of the picture. And best of all, she's expecting a baby. Eve thinks she's landed the greatest gig, but the job seems too good to be true. Why would the Highgates hire Eve if she has no prior nannying experience? Why must Eve stay out of sight? And what's with the mysterious yachts coming in and out of the Highgates' private marina? It's too late to ask questions, though. Eve is already in far too deep. And I remember Rose wrote the Girl in the Mirror, came out a couple of years ago. I think it came out during the pandemic, and I interviewed her. She's really terrific. And what Joshua and Jackson said, this a gonzo thrill ride, this audacious Rose Carlyle kept me riveted and guessing. I loved it, and you will too. And I'm looking forward to it because I really enjoyed her. And I love the line, they're a perfect couple. They have the perfect plan. All they need is the perfect victim. So no one will know. Next, we've got the sequel coming from Jean Hanff Korowitz. I also read this my week off. It was really fun. It's a romp of a book when you get to see somebody pick up what they've written before and make the addition of, what happens. So anybody who remembers the plot, remembers stole the plot from a student, what happens? Okay. His wife takes care of him. So Anna Williams Balmer, she's taking care of business. That's to say she's taking care of her husband, best-selling a novelist Jacob Finch Bonner, and laid to rest all those anonymous accusations of plagiarism that so tormented him. Now she's living the contented life of a literary widow, enjoying her husband's royalty checks in perpetuity, and for the second time in her life, a work of fiction intercedes. And this time it's her own debut novel, The Afterword. She publishes her book and indulges in her own literary acclaim. She begins to receive excerpts of a novel she never expected to see again, a novel that should no longer exist. Someone out there knows far too much about her late brother, her late husband, and just possibly Anna herself. What does this person want, and what are they prepared to do? She's come too far, worked too hard to lose what she values most, the sole and uncontested right to her story. So here we've got the sequel. It's really good. And it picks up moments that were in the plot that you'll remember. If you haven't read the plot, probably want to pick it up and read it first, simply because it's going to just, track so well. I'm going to interview Jean. We're trying to set up for the next couple of weeks. She's also going to be in Morristown, and I will be interviewing her there. The Seventh Floor by David McCluskey is out on October 1st. A Russian arrives in Singapore with a secret to sell. When the Russian is killed and Sam Joseph, the CIA officer dispatched for the meet, goes missing, operational chief Artemis Proctor is made a scapegoat for the disaster and run out of the service. Months later, Sam appears at Proctor's doorstep with an explosive secret. There's a Russian mole buried deep within the highest ranks of the CIA. Proctor and Sam investigate. They arrive at a short list of suspects made up of Proctor's closest friends and fiercest enemies. The hunt requires Proctor to dredge up her checkered past in service to the CIA, placing the pair in the sights of a savvy Russian spy master who will protect the Moscow's mole in Langley at all costs. It's one of the book group's speed dating titles. He's the author of Moscow X, definitely a book with a lot of foreign intrigue. Next, we do some biographies, memoirs, biographies, and other nonfiction. We're going to start with Bone of the Bone, Essays on America by a Daughter of the Working Class by Sarah Smarsh. Her book, Heartland, was one of my bets-ons the year that it came out. It's an absolutely terrific story of what it was like to be growing up in the Heartland, where her goal was to not be like the three women that were prior to her generation, who all were pregnant at the age of like 16 or 17. And instead, she wants to make sure, as she says, I keep my legs crossed, go to college, get a good education, and move on with my life. And she does. Some Bone of the Bone, she's National Book Award finalist Sarah Smarsh, brings her graceful storytelling and incisive critique to the challenges that define our times: class division, political fissures, gender inequality, environmental crisis, media bias, and the rural-urban gulf. Smart's a journalist who grew up on a wheat farm in Kansas and was the first in her family to graduate from college, has long focused on cultural dissonance that many in her industry neglected until recently. And now this thought-provoking collection of more than 30 for highly relevant, previously published essays from the past decade, 2013 to 2024, demonstrates a career and a life steeped in the issues that affect our collective future. I'm reading these. I'm probably about 4 or 5 essays in right now. It's a lot to think about in each one of them. I'm trying to read like 1 or 2 each night. I'd love to interview her at some point, simply because I loved Heartland so much. And I feel that she's talking about America that's flyover, a lot of the flyover, what's going on. And it's really interesting to see her perspective from coming from the Midwest on what she sees as what's happening in culture today. Next, we've got First in the Family by Jessica Hoppe. This is the first year of the quarantine. Drug overdoses spiked, the highest ever recorded. Jessica Hoppe's cousin was one of them. Never learned the true history of substance use disorder in my family, she writes. People just disappeared. Time of her cousin's death, she'd been in recovery for nearly 4 years, but she hadn't told anyone. First in the family, Hop shares her journey, the first in her family to do so, and takes readers on a remarkable investigation of her family's history, the American dream, and the erasure of BIPOC from recovery institutions and narratives, leaving the reader with an urgent message of hope. It is a story of survival, recovery, and the American dream. Next, we've got The Siege by Ben McIntyre, which is out this week. The American hostage crisis in Iran boiled in its seventh month in the spring of 1980. Six heavily armed gunmen barged into the Iranian embassy in London, taking 26 hostages. What followed over the next 6 days was an increasingly tense standoff, one that threatened any moment to spill into a bloodbath. A story of ordinary men and women under immense pressure, The Siege takes readers minute by thrilling minute through an event that would echo across the next 2 decades, provide a direct historical link to the tragedy on 9/11. Drawing on exclusive interviews and a wealth of never-before-seen files, Ben McIntyre reconstructs a week in which every day minted a new hero and every second spelled the potential for doom. So there we've got the hostage crisis. It was really interesting, but the crisis in Iran, the woman whose family, she was our family babysitter, her sister had actually been in that Iranian embassy, and she had just left like 6 months before the embassy was taken over. So it was really pretty crazy. Next, we've got Connie by Connie Chung. Connie Chung. She's a pioneer. In 1969, at the age of 23, this one shy daughter of Chinese parents took her first job at a local television station in her hometown of Washington, D.C., and soon thereafter began working at CBS News as a correspondent. Proudly influenced by her family's cultural traditions, yet growing up completely Americanized in the United States, Chung describes her career as an Asian woman in a white male-centered world. Pulls no punches as she provides behind-the-scenes tour of her singular life. From showdowns with powerful men in and out of the newsroom to stories behind the career-defining reporting and unwavering support of her husband, Maury Povich, nothing is off limits, good, bad, or ugly. Sarah Kakania memoirs out next week. Next, we've got She-Wolves, The Untold Story of Women on Wall Street by Paulina Bren. First came the secretaries from Brooklyn and Queens, the smart cookies, who saw that make money, lots of it, might be within their grasp. Then came the first female Harvard Business School graduates, who went for a rude awakening, because an equal degree did not mean equal opportunity. By the 1980s, as the market went into turbodrive, women were being plucked from the campuses to feed the belly of a rapidly expanding beast, playing for high stakes in Wall Street's bad boy culture by day and clubbing by night. She-Wolves, award-winning historian Paulina Bren, tells the story of how women got infiltrated Wall Street from the swinging 60s to 9/11, starting at a time when no ladies' signs hung across the doors of its luncheon clubs and more discreetly inside its brokerage houses and investment banks. So this book group speed dating pick. It's really interesting. My niece is working at a company and is very, very men-centric, and they asked her to go out and play in a golf tournament. She's a really good golfer, really good golfer. And they said to her, we'd really like to invite you. And the day before, her boss stops by her office. He goes, I have to uninvite you. It's a men's only tournament. So even to this day, we're still talking about maybe you can play next time. So really interesting story that's still pervading. I missed a good golfer too. Okay, I am really, really looking forward to this book. Be ready when luck happens by Ina Garten. It is coming out on October 1st. She's got a very big high-end tour, meaning she does big venues. I don't know if tickets are still available, but this is her memoir. Also, she is the narrator of it, and I am very much looking forward to listening to it on audio because I feel like that's the best way to hear the story. Here, for the first time, Arna Garten presents an intimate, entertaining, and inspiring account of her remarkable journey. Anna's gift to make everything look easy, yet all her accomplishments have been the result of hard work, audacious choices, and exquisite attention to detail. In her unmistakable voice, no one tells a story like Ina. She brings her past and her process to life in a high-spirited, no-hells-barred memoir that chronicles decades of personal challenges, adventures and misadventures, and unexpected career twists, all delivered with her signature combination of playfulness and purpose. like I said, very much looking forward to it. I was actually at a book party at her home a couple of years ago, which was like incredible. Be in Ina Garten's apartment. It was a children's book author that she was a friend to, and so she hosted the party. And to watch the crew working in her kitchen, people were in there taking pictures. It was really pretty crazy. And she was kind of quiet during the evening, off to the side. But I also remember going out to the Hamptons when she had her place out there and going in to get the very expensive but very fabulous chicken salad. I still wish we could figure out how to make it. Next, we've got The Message from Ta-Nehisi Coates, which is coming on October 1st. It's the first of the book's three intertwining essays. On his first trip to Africa, he finds himself in two places at once: Dakar, a modern city in Senegal, and in a mythical kingdom in his mind. And then he takes readers along with him to Columbia, South Carolina, where he reports on his own books banning, but also explores the larger backlash to the nation's recent reckoning with history and the deeply rooted American mythology so visible in that city, a capital of the Confederacy with statues of segregationists looming over its public squares. And finally, in the book's longest section, he travels to Palestine, where he sees with devastating clarity how easily we are misled by nationalist narratives and the tragedy that lies in the clash between stories we tell and the reality of life on the ground. So he is a best-selling author of Between the World and Me. This one will be out on October 1st. Next, we got some November titles to look forward to. Think holiday shopping as well, folks. From J.T. Ellison, we've got A Very Bad Thing coming November 1st. With a number of hit titles and a highly anticipated movie tie-ins, celebrated novelist Columbia Jones is at the top of her game. Fans around the world adore her. But on the final night of her latest book tour, face of the crowd makes her author collapse. And by the next morning, she's lying dead in a pool of blood. Death shocks the world and leaves Darian, her daughter, and publicist reeling. Police have nothing to go on at first. But then details emerge, pointing to the author's illicit past. Turns out that many people had motive to kill Columbia, and with a hungry reporter and frustrated cop on the trail, her secrets won't stay buried long. But how many lives will they shatter as the truth comes out? So there you've got, once again, J.T. Ellison hits it out of the park. A very bad thing. Next, we've got The Author's Guide to Murder by Beatrice Williams, Lauren Willig, and Karen White. Probably know the three W's. They write together. It's a funny story of years ago. I interviewed them, or I was supposed to moderate a panel that they were on. And I asked one question, and for the rest of the time, they just kept the talking going. So they vowed that if I interview them again, I'll get to talk. But I don't quite believe it, but I think I'm going to still take the chance. So here's what we've got. There's been a sensational murder at historic Castle Kinloch, a Gothic fantasy of grey granite on a remote island in the Highlands of Scotland. Literary superstar Brett Safran Presley has been found dead under bizarre circumstances in the castle's tower book-lined study. Years ago, Presley purchased the castle as a showpiece for his brand and to lure paying guests with a taste for writerly glamour. Now it seems the castle has done him in, or possibly one of the castle's guests have. Chief investigator Ewan McIntosh, a local with no love for literary Americans, finds himself in the unenviable task of attracting statements from three American lady novelists. Why did these authors really come to the Castle Kinloch? So there you've got pencil dagger going through. Three of them are lady novelists or mystery novelists. What's a little revenge among friends? So there you go. Lisa Unger said it's a pure delight from start to finish. Williams, Wig, and White are in top form in this clever, engrossing whodunit with a heart. So there you go. And we've got Didion and Babbitts by Lita Enelick. It is coming on November 12th. These Babbitts died on December 17th, 2021. Found in the rack, ruin, and filth of her apartment was a stack of boxes packed by her mother decades before. Inside was a lost world that centered on two-story rental in a down-on-the-heels section of Hollywood, 7406 Franklin Avenue, a combination of salon, hotbed, living end, where writers and artists mixed with movie stars, rock and rollers, and drug trash. 7406 Franklin Avenue was the making of one great American writer, Joan Didion. It was also the breaking and then remaking and thus true making of another great American writer, Eve Babbitts. Didion Babbitts formed a complicated alliance, a friendship that went bad, amity turned to enemy. Didion, in spite of her conventional style, is so little known or understood. She remains opaque, elusive until now. Got this one in the other room. I'm really looking forward to delving into it. coming November 12th. Next, we've got Lazarus Man from Richard Price, also coming on November 12th. East Harlem, 2008. In an instant, five-story tenement collapses into a fuming hill of rubble, pancaking the cars parked in front and coating the street with a large, thick layer of ash. The city's rescue services and media outlets respond. Surrounding neighborhood descends into chaos. Day's end, 6 bodies are recovered. Many of the other tenants are missing. Lazarus Man, Richard Price, one of the greatest chroniclers of life in urban America, creates intertwining portraits of a group of compelling and singular characters whose lives are permanently impacted by this disaster. Probably remember him as the author of Lush Life. Next, from David Baldacci, also coming on November 12th, we've got Travis Devine has become a pro at accomplishing any mission he's given. But this time, it's not his skills that sent him to Seattle to aid the FBI in escorting orphaned 12-year-old Betsy Adome to meeting with her uncle, who's under investigation for RICO charges. Instead, he's hoping to lay low and keep off the radar of an enemy, the girl on the train. But as Devin gets to know Betsy, questions begin to arise about the death of her parents. And he digs for answers, and he finds points to a conspiracy bigger than he ever could have imagined. It might finally be time for Divine and the girl on the train to come face to face. He's going to find out the difference between his friends and his enemies, and in some cases, they might as well be both. So there we've got To Die For. Next, we've got Cher, the memoir, part one. This is part one that's coming this year from Day Street Books in November. Part two will be coming November next year. Yes, because after more than 70 years fighting to live her own life on her own terms, Cher finally reveals her true story, intimate details in a two-part memoir. As a dyslexic child who dreamed of becoming famous, Cher was raised in often chaotic circumstances, surrounded by singers, actors, and a mother who inspired her in spite of their difficult relationship. Their trade back honesty and humor, Cher traces how this diamond in the rough succeeded with no plan and little confidence to become the trailblazing superstar the world has been able to ignore for more than half a century. Follows her extraordinary beginnings through childhood, meeting and marrying Sonny Bono, and reveals the highly complicated relationship that made them world famous but eventually drove them apart. I believe that she's narrating this as well, so what could be more fun than listening to Cher as you run around the house doing all kinds of things around the house, all kinds of errands and being in the car and whatever with Cher, part one. I love a book that's in two parts. Next, we've got Citizen by Bill Clinton, January 20th, 2001. After nearly 30 years in politics, 8 of them as president of the United States, Bill Clinton was suddenly a private citizen. Only 54 years old, he wanted to make meaningful use of his skills, his relationships with world readers, and all that he learned in a lifetime of politics. And just days after leaving the White House, the call came to aid victims of a devastating earthquake in India, and he hit the ground running. Next 2 decades, it would create an enduring legacy of public service and advocacy work from Indonesia to Louisiana, Northern Ireland to South Africa, and in the process, reimagine philanthropy and redesign the impact a former president could have on the world. Front row, first-person chronicle of the post-presidential years and the most significant events of the 21st century. It's really interesting because I didn't realize that he was only 54 when he left being president. Next, we've got The City and Its Uncertain Walls by Haruki Murakami. It's coming on November 19th. This is a long-awaited new novel, his first in 6 years. He revisits a town his readers will remember, a place where a dream reader reviews dreams and where our shadows become untethered from ourselves. The City and Its Uncertain Walls is a love story, a quest, an ode to books and to the libraries that house them, and a parable for these strange post-pandemic times. So we've got A City and Its Uncertain Walls. And lastly, we've got Shell Games coming on November 19th from Bonnie Kissler. I have really enjoyed Bonnie's last 2 books. Here we say, who says confession is good for the soul? Julie's mother, Kate, is a self-made real estate developer, a grand dame in Florida society, and a power broker in Florida politics. It wasn't easy for Julie to grow up in the shadow of such a dynamo, but she loves her mother. She and her husband, Eric, are thrilled when Kate marries her long-lost high school sweetheart, salt-of-the-earth man named Charlie. But on their wedding night, Kate calls the police in hysterics to report that Charlie confessed to a notorious unsolved crime from decades before. Charlie says that Kate imagined it. Eric says that Kate has dementia. And the FBI says that Charlie couldn't possibly have committed the crime. Julie doesn't know what to believe. Is her brilliant mother losing her mind, or is sweet, lovable Charlie gaslighting Kate to get control of her fortune? Julie tries to navigate through this maze of paranoia and mind games. Cracks start to develop in her own marriage as it seems that Eric is keeping secrets. So there you've got shell games. I think also probably love it because there's a pool on the cover of the book. Who says confession is good for the soul? Okay, here we've got some notable September paperback releases. We've got The Amazing Gracie Adams by Fran Littlewood, Class by Stephanie Lamb, Baldacci's The Edge, Zadie Smith's The Fraud, Alice Feeney's Good Bad Girl, Stephen King's Holly, Let Us Descend from Jesmyn Ward, Mother Daughter Murder Night by Nita Simon, Museum of Failures by Thrudi Ummerger. And I interviewed her about that book, and it was one of my bets on selections, as the same was for The Leftover Woman by Jean Kwok. Also interviewed her, and it was a bets on selection. Armor of the Night by Ken Follett, and Brooklyn Crime Novel from Jonathan Lethem. There are now 28, but Book Reporter bets on selections so far. Probably have at least 4 to add to there by the next time we meet. And I don't know how many I'm going to pick for the year. We still got some great reading ahead. So we shall see what happens. And it's funny, when I look at these books, I am still completely interested in talking about them, and I still believe in my choices, which is really huge because sometimes you look back and go, should I pick that? No, I believe in all of these. Also, if you look in the upper right, did I ever tell you Genevieve Kingston? She is going to be at Morristown Festival of Books, and I am going to be interviewing her as well as Marjan Kamali about the Lion Women of Tehran. So lots going on there. Mary Kay Andrews is going to be there as well. Trying to see if there's anybody else here that is going to be there, but I think that's it. Okay. These are recent Book Reporter Talks to videos and podcasts. Chris Whitaker, All the Colors of the Dark, deep story from him behind why he wrote this book. And we talk a lot about what his childhood was like and how it's influenced his work. Dawn Tripp's Jackie is probably one of the most interesting books that I've read just because of the style that she wrote in. Really, really a terrific book. And I have an Asian friend who said it was her favorite book of the summer. And it's a kind of book that I just read when I was going to bed at night, like a couple of chapters at a time, because you feel like you know Jackie, but the way Dawn was writing and what her voice was, really terrific. TJ Newman's Worst Case Scenario, do not read it on an airplane, but a terrific book about what happens when a plane crashes. You don't have to worry about the victims on board. Everybody dies on board, but it crashes into a power plant. And what does that mean? A nuclear power plant. Really interesting. She did a lot of research. You feel like you're there. One of the books I think that is really beautiful this year is The Days I Loved You Most by Amy Neff. What's interesting is Amy wrote a book in her 30s that talks about a long marriage. And I find it really interesting how well she captures the ups and downs of a marriage that has been there for a long, anybody who's married for a long time. She does a really terrific job with telling of the story. We've got a special evening event, and we're not just going to do the books here. We're going to do some books that go later in the year as well. That's going to be next Wednesday, the 18th at 8 o'clock in the evening. Sign up is available now on Book Reporter and readinggroupguides.com. We also have a very special event. I loved Go as a River. It was one of my bets on selections last year. I actually caught up with Shelley when I was in Colorado out in Crested Butte where she lives. And we had a fabulous conversation. She also sent me to the peach farm where she did the research for her book. And we bought some amazing Colorado peaches, which we then brought along with us and gave it to our friends along the way, which was really funny. Hi, would you like a peach? Can you have a peach? They were really, really fabulous. She's going to be discussing Go as a River, international bestseller. I can't remember how many countries it's sold in. This is going to be on Tuesday, September 24th at 8 o'clock. The book is not long. If you have not read it yet, you've got time to read it. It's one of those books that you will want to hear more from her about how she decided to write the story. It's set in Colorado, which is a place that's very close to my heart. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful story. So Go as a River, next title. And we already have somebody lined up for October. Tom, should I share who it is or should I keep it a secret? What do you think?
Oh, you can. Oh, why not? You
Why
can.
not? Okay, we just heard that it's going to be Amanda Remind me, Amanda Perry's last name?
Amanda Peters.
Amanda Peters. I always do that one wrong. Amanda Peters talking about the berry pickers, which is also one of my bets on selection, a very big book. It's coming out in paperback in late October. We're going to be interviewing her on October 29th at 8 o'clock in the evening. And really interesting because she's part of one of the Indian tribes that is mentioned in the book. And it's just a really, really compelling story. Once again, not a long read. So if you want to pick that one up as well, we're giving a little bit of early notice on that. Anybody who signs up for our events newsletter, we're putting all the events that are upcoming. We're trying to book. We have one more to book for November. We've got an ask out right now. We're hoping to hear about that this week. And then if so, we will have our complete fall lineup locked down. So that will all be in the events newsletter. You can sign up for it on tbrnetwork.com. And our next Bookaccino Live preview is going to be on Wednesday, October 9th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And we're going to look at books that are coming out on October 8th through November 5th. And we're going to be peeking ahead at December. So I cannot believe we're already be talking about October and going into the end of the year books, Tom, correct? So thank you everybody for joining us. We so totally appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you next time for Bookaccino Live.